Electronic music is taking over the planet, filling clubs and arenas all over the world. And as it continues to monetize itself, though, it's critical questions are being raised regarding intellectual property rights and many levels of doing business. Now, what we have here in a panel sponsored by the Department of Foreign Affairs, of all people, Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development Canada, some of the most important people in the EDM world are here to talk about what's going on and to set the tone from Los Angeles in the offices of LaPolt Law PC, Dina LaPolt. And please welcome her to the podium. She will introduce the rest of the panel.
How's everybody doing? You tired? Yes. All right, well, we have an all-star panel here today. Amazing. All these people. You guys probably all know, because you just heard him speak, Shelley Finkel, who, as you know, started out as an American boxing and music manager and promoting such acts as Vanilla Fudge and Mountain, before moving into boxing in the late 70s. Currently, he's the head of acquisitions at SFX. Since coming on board, Shelley's helped close deals with heavyweight Dutch promoter IDT and their Tomorrow World Sensation and Mysteryland festivals, digital retailer Beatport, and the management company behind Diplo, Dylan Francis, and many others. Teamwork. SFX has acquired app developers Arc90, digital marketers Famehouse, and Tunzi, who offer VIP experiences to fans. Finally, it was recently announced that SFX will be partnering with Simon Cowell's Psycho and T-Mobile to launch an EDM competition show called Ultimate DJ, which will start off with a social media-driven voting on recordings and then move into live performances for final rounds. And before we get started, let's not talk about EDM because it's a bad word, okay? What we talk about, when we talk about EDM, it's really event-driven marketing. That's what that is. Okay, so when we're talking about the genre of music, we talk about electronic or we just talk about dance. Right, Patrick? Yep. Okay.
You got it, Dina.
Yeah, exactly. Next to Shelley is probably the best manager I've ever worked with in my entire life.
Whoa, easy.
It's true. It's true. He makes this very hard job of management look seamless and easy. This is Dean Wilson, who's the president of 360 Group. It's a global entertainment company founded in 2007 by Dean and his partner Mark Gillespie. They have offices in London, New York City, and Los Angeles. The first client signed to 360 artist management roster was Calvin Harris. The roster would grow to include Deadmau5, Nero, Hertz, Sasha, and more. In 2011, the company announced a worldwide partnership with the US entertainment company Roc Nation. Now, next to Dean is this man, is probably, this record executive, Patrick Moxey, is more famous than the artist he signs. Right, Patrick? He is the founder of Ultra Records, Ultra Music, and Ultra International Music Publishing. He has become synonymous with the electronic dance music and has signed and released albums by the biggest artists in electronic and dance, including Deadmau5, Calvin Harris, Cascade, David Guetta, and the list goes on and on and on. So you just heard him in the other room, but we're going to talk to him about, you know, where we were 15 years ago and where we're going to be going. Next to Patrick is Mike Tooncliffe, who's been an entrepreneur and a global account leader for major consumer brands for two of the top 5 media agencies in the world. He joined Group N in 2010 as a consultant responsible for developing new revenue streams from specialist businesses in digital content and entertainment. He was promoted to Chief Growth Officer in 2012, and he oversees major new businesses and organic growth revenue. Mike is heavily involved in SFX and assists their company through building stronger partnerships with various brands. Next to Mike is Ryan Kruger, is the Managing Director of Electronic Nation Canada, the dance music division of Live Nation Canada. Prior to joining Live Nation, Mike founded and ran Destiny Events in Toronto, one of North America's biggest running independent electronic event producers. Destiny has been responsible for hundreds of electronic events from 1993 to present day, raising in size from 300 to 30,000 people. It's the organization behind nearly 2 decades of the World Electronic Music Festival. So this is quite the panel, right? So on the panel, I want to talk about this because we talk about, you know, EDM, which we're not going to talk about because that's really event-driven marketing. But let me tell you, 15 years ago, all right, 1997, 1998, as a business person, because I'm an entertainment lawyer, so I focus on the business of trading intellectual property assets, copyrights, rights of publicity, and trademarks. That's my business. 15 years ago, I started representing a rap artist, or a little over 15 years ago, named Tupac Shakur. And he had, thank you, the greatest rapper in the whole world. Do you guys agree? So Tupac had just died, and when he died, he left behind 220 unreleased recordings. And I'd met his mother, who's an amazing woman, and we had to figure out how to get his message out. What we didn't talk about was how to monetize the assets. That was never a conversation that happened as much. It was like, how do we take this art and bring it to the world so the world can see what Tupac wanted to do. The one thing that I clearly remember 15 years ago is that all of a sudden, the rap music genre crossed over to mainstream. Whereas prior to that, it was largely an underground movement that had been growing for over a decade, but was mainly ignored by the music business industry. And when I'm talking about music business, I'm talking about record companies and publishers. It was a niche market, certainly not the forefront of the mainstream music business. At that time, it was rock music. So when rap music crossed over, all of a sudden, it seemed overnight, you looked at Billboard's top 20 songs, and 2/3 of them, or 1/3 of them actually, sorry, were rap tracks. And it took the music business by storm, the business people. So then you had all these people jumping in, trying to figure out how to monetize this asset and bring it to new levels. I am sitting on, 15 years later, working in this space, and it's almost identical to what I experienced 15 years ago. So with that, I want to start with Patrick. And Patrick, 15 years ago, what was your game plan? Because when we're talking about the 3 things that's important to succeeding in this space right now, it's the music, it's the playing live, and it's the strategic partnerships. And that's what we're going to talk about. So 15 years ago, what was going on with you?
I'm really glad you brought up the hip-hop example, because in an earlier incarnation of Patrick Moxey, managing the group Gangstar, running the label Payday Records, the hip-hop label through Polygram when I was in my early 20s, I signed J. Rue the Damager, Jay-Z, various artists to that label, and you know, the same thing happened at that time. I mean, I started working for Russell Simmons. That was my first job in the business, working for Russell and Leor at Rush, when they had a small office, which was Rush and Def Jam in one office. And the same thing happened where you had a really authentic movement which hit a point where it just exploded and the industry dived into it. And it's exactly what you say. We're sitting here at the same time, you know, but fast forward 15 years now to electronic music. But 15 years ago, at the time when the hip-hop started to really get, you know, very branded and everything like that, I was getting a little bored with the hip-hop at that time. And I kind of moved away to something that was happening more underground, more in the clubs. Stuff that you would find kind of hidden away in different places. And it was Roger Sanchez, it was Naked Music, it was Eric Murillo, you know, it was the Chicago house scene. You know, so that was the kind of music that we gravitated to, something that was really authentic and kind of coming from a place, an organic place, almost pre-internet at that time. You know, you'd communicate by pressing a 12-inch and handing the 12-inch to the DJ. So it was a really different place and a great place. But obviously we've seen huge changes since then, since I was doing warehouse parties at that time.
Illegal warehouse parties.
We didn't have too many licenses.
Dean, I'm going to turn to you. Dean, just so you guys understand the business structure in the music business, how many people in the room are artists? Raise your hands. Okay. So you have 4 teams of advisors that surround the artist. So my law practice is made up only of music creators. That's all we represent. We represent talent only. We're a talent-based law firm. And in the music space, you have 4 people that are primarily responsible for guiding the careers of any music artist. And that is the manager. And the manager acts as the CEO of the artist enterprise, okay? That's the visionary, the person that's thinking 19 months ahead of where we sit today, the strategist. You have the entertainment lawyer, which is me, and our role has been expanded to now become more like a general counsel. So certainly in this space, electronic music, we're working on a global platform. It's no longer just negotiating deals in the US. I mean, it's all over the place. You're in Asia, you're in Australia, you're in Germany, you're in France. So I manage an arcade of lawyers all over the world that advise me on various things, whether my artist is starting a business in Hong Kong or they're doing a festival in the Netherlands. You know, so it's more of, it's like the general counsel is the entertainment lawyer, negotiating the deals. Then you have the business manager, which in the music business is just a fancy word for an accountant. Okay, because the music business is really, really complicated between how royalties are paid, how copyrights are traded, the different laws that govern trademarks and the rights of publicity that are very different in all the states in the US, and also very different in London and Europe as opposed to North America. And then you have the agents, and the agents are like the VP of artist development. So you have these 4 people that really are the team of people that manage the assets of the artist. So with that, Dean Wilson, who is the manager of some big electronic acts. Dean, 15 years ago, where were you and how did you have the foresight to get into this space?
15 years ago, I was selling records out the back of a van in London for a small distribution company called Essential Direct, which I sold predominantly UK garage. And my biggest store at that time, independent record store, was a place called Big Apple Records, which had a studio above it, run by my then business partner, Arthur Smith, who is now one part of Magnetic Man with Screamin' Benga. Still a great producer, engineer, and then we started to make some garage records. And then one day we thought, oh, maybe we should try and sign a record and see if we can get some kind of chart success, which we didn't have a clue what we were doing at the time. We just knew what good music was and what sold on the van, and that's how we found it. And then one guy introduced us to a guy called Daniel Bedingfield. And he was working in Starbucks coffee around the corner from the shop. And he came into the studio and we made Gotta Get Through This, which was a 3-week #1, and we thought we were geniuses. We never had another hit record after that. I continued to sell records from the van as vinyl was starting to look shaky. And we realised there was going to be some kind of seismic shift into CDs and CDJs, and we were pressing and distributing and helping people manufacture records and distribute. And then we did some licensing deals for those people, and then organically grew into helping them in every part of their career, and finding them agents, helping them with contracts, finding them lawyers, finding them business managers, accountants. And then, you know, we partnered up to learn more about the business with a guy called Ian Wright, who's no longer with us. So had a company called Reverb XL in West London, and we're there for a year and a half, learning more about the business and how the intricacies of just how complicated and how many different revenue streams there are in the music industry. And that's really when it started, until one day Mark Gillespie rang me, who was my business partner, who was the booking talent booker for Global Gathering, the festival in the UK, and he said, I found this kid on MySpace. Yes, MySpace, we all remember that. Called Calvin Harris. And he said, you know, can you do it with me? I don't know what I'm doing. And so we did, and here we are today. The rest is somewhat history, and Dead Mouse came along about a year later, and one of the reasons I'm sitting here today, because he has now become, you know, Canada's biggest electronic export around the world, and has a phenomenal brand and a huge team around him now. And you know, Patrick was part of that success story along the way with the music in North America.
How did you and Patrick come about to meet? Because Patrick, you were you were in this space now.
Well, I've always been back and forth from the UK, and that's how we really connected. So I've always been someone bringing European music to America. So I do have a UK passport gathering dust somewhere, as well as an American one. So basically, I met Dean, and we did a series of great releases with deadmau5. And you know, it's like Dean said, you know, at that time, it was also just being fundamentally following your musical instincts for something authentic, fresh, new, and then building infrastructure around it where there was no infrastructure. That's essentially how we came up and we grew.
I think the surviving the EDM boom, which I hate, there is no boom. This is our business today. And all of these people here, including me, everyone else that's worked in this business for more than 10 to 15 years have been through and worked hard to get where we got today. And there is no boom. This is the youth culture of today. You know, we now connect through amazing technology and social sides of our business, and the SFXs and the Live Nations of the world and the AGs have now helped us all create these monster IPs and these huge festivals that everybody goes to as a cultural movement now. You know, people don't go to festivals on their own, they go with 10, 15, 20 of their friends. And that's what we have to always remember. It's about the fans. Yes, you make great music and everybody loves it, but it's a cultural youth movement, and that's the most important thing to me, is how we connect our artists with our fans.
Yeah, Dean, you've called this movement the youth cultural movement. And in the previous panel, they talked about how the whole proliferation of the genre really happened on the internet. And Shelley, 15 years ago, you've been in the sports business most of your life. And how did you have the foresight to hook up with Bob and kind of get into this?
Well, let me backtrack a little first. I originally started in music. And it blows my mind when a young DJ is asking $10,000, and I used to pay $1,500 for 2 shows at my club with the Doors. And after the first show, Jim Morrison said, "Look, I sold out for you. Can I open the bar?" I said, "Of course." He got so drunk he fell off the stage the second show. And to see what's happening today, a bit of it is this man right next to me. I believe the world goes around, and what goes around comes around. So in 1968, I'm up at the Boston Garden, and I say to the fellow, "I'd like to bring a show here." He says, "Who do you want to bring?" I said, "Jimi Hendrix." He says, "Never heard of him. Do you think he'll do business?" I said, "I think he'll do business." Go forward, 2010, I'm at a lunch with this gentleman next to me, and he said, "You know, I managed deadmau5." And I said, "Who's that?" So quickly I learned. And that evening he invited me to Electric Daisy, and I thought I was going to a club. So we go to the LA Coliseum, and there's 85,000 people there. And I think I'm pretty hip at my age. I said, "How do I not know about this?" So I'm walking around, and all these young girls are coming over to me, and they say, "Boy, you're cool at your age being here." And I'm saying, "I didn't know I was coming." But from there, I realized that there's this business that really grew out of raves in garages and in other places, and it was by young people, and they, it just grew, and they really didn't know how to handle it except just watch it grow and make it better. And the Electric Daisy was actually done by Pasquale Rotella, and he says to me one day, "You want to buy my company?" I said, "How much?" He says, $30 million. I said, "Okay." He says, "No." I said, "Okay." I said, "Why don't we do a vodka?" He said, "What do you have in mind?" I said, "Electric Daisy vodka." He says, "That's great." He says, "No." I said, "I have one more idea." He says, "What's that?" I said, "Instead of these energy drinks, let's do a nightlife drink. We'll call it Insomniac, Stay Awake With Us." He said, "I love that." I said, "You want to do it?" He says, "No." I said, "Okay." I realized I'm not going to do a deal here with this guy no matter what. So I met Disco Donnie, And Donnie was the one who wanted to expand the whole genre and to add to the experience and make it better and better. And he was our first person who came along. And when this was happening, I said, this is similar to the first SFX. And if people don't know about it, SFX was formed by Bob Silliman. He bought up all of the concert companies in the world, basically. And he sold it to Clear Channel. There was some management, there was an agency, and there was the live music part. And Clear Channel spun it off, and it became Live Nation. So we decided, and we have a name for it. We don't call it EDM in our office. We call it EMC, Electronic Music Culture, because it really is a culture. And it goes way, way further than music or dance per se. It's these kids who are growing up, and they're growing up on social media, internet, things that I'm learning. And every time, one of the people who was on another panel just before, Mike Feiback, who's Fame House, I go into him or call him 2-3 times a week, and I say, Mike, this guy came to the office and he has this and it's great. He says, Shelley, that's 3 years old. And I said, oh. And I go on to the next thing, but it is a young person's love. It's a young person's industry, and I'm just glad that we're a part of it and able to help grow it worldwide and make it a little better, I hope.
You know, that's a challenge for being a business person in this space because, you know, when you're looking at trading copyrights and trademarks and monetizing these types of intellectual property assets, you know, electronic music is a culture that what Dean says, and Shelley, everybody on the panel, youth cultural movement, you know, it's largely made up of an audience of millennials. And millennials are you guys in the audience, kids, people that were born 1986 to present day. You know, you're used to limitless choice and instant gratification. So my challenge as an entertainment lawyer is how to authentically brand, you know, whatever artist I'm working with. How do I work with this team of people to create a brand, build an artist brand with other people's money? You know, and that's the challenge today, because everybody's looking for freemium, and I'm of the mindset you got to give it away to get it. You know, we all know what happens when we are building brands that are unauthentic. Remember the whole Alicia Keys thing with iPhones and BlackBerry? Did everybody know about that? Okay, so you got to be very careful when you're building brands with an artist. You have to make sure that the brand that you're building, if you're going to do a strategic partnership with a brand, or with a promoter, that it's something that you really believe in. So if Dean is going to do something for Dead Mouse, it's going to be because Dead Mouse is using that product anyway, like Tim Hortons, you know? He's drinking that coffee 5 times a day anyway. That's an authentic branding situation. What, is that him? There he is. Yeah, Timmy's, there you go. So with that, Mike, when you're talking about strategic partnership, which is in your realm, and you're working with people, a couple things. There's 2 types of branding deals we do, right? You're going to do it with the promoters. You're going to do it with the festivals like Ryan and Shelley. That's one half of it. Or you're going to do it directly with an artist management like Dean for someone, an artist-based. What are the differences? What do you look for when someone comes to you wanting to build a brand with your money?
Okay, well I think if I could also just take a tiny little step back just so that people can understand how we got to where we got to from brands. Originally, obviously brands were involved with music, I mean going way, way back to the days of Coke and I'd Like to Teach the World Sing, etc., so all that sort of sync stuff. Then we moved into what I call artist level endorsement, and we'll get to answering your questions. We've got artist level endorsement and sort of presented by the artist and that sort of stuff. So whether it's Mary J. Blige and Chrysler and appearing in the TV commercial, etc. And then into what I call broader-based business partnerships. Now, broader-based business partnerships started a few years back, and probably good examples of that are the likes of Groove Armada signing to Bacardi, or Tag Deodorants setting up Tag Records. So I think this whole space of what I call strategic business partnerships has evolved quite considerably since then. So a lot of those things I was talking about just there were very artist-based, artist-related. What we tend to look at these days is not so much whether it's artist or festival, it's a question of what's most appropriate for our needs. And our needs are not built around, let's get an artist to endorse the product, or let's have the brand as the exclusive, should we say, vodka at a festival with all the signage and all the rest of it. What we're looking for are opportunities to deliver something back for consumers. So that's where we'd approach this from. If the best way of doing that is in conjunction with an artist, that's the way we'll go, or if it's in conjunction with a festival, that's the way we'll go. I have to say, my personal view on the EDM space is, particularly on the brands that I've been looking at.
You can't say EDM, it's a bad word, Mike.
EMC. Dance music. Entertainment. Is that, I've now completely forgotten what I was going to say. No, is that we can actually deliver something to the consumers, to the fans, and to the consumers of the brands. And quite often that comes around from being able to get access to exclusive content. So again, with the artist, depends how much of that we could do. Certainly with a lot of the festivals, and obviously there are some rights issues, but I think not as many as you would have got in other genres. It's probably easier, actually. It's probably easier to do a deal with SFX or a deal with Insomniac, where you've got live on the ground, so in effect you've got a live platform, you've got the content, there's so much content comes out of live that you've got all of the content which you can, as I said, present via the brand back to consumers. And that's really how we start to look at these things.
Okay, Patrick, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I think that's all great, but usually when brands approach us, it's much more like the sledgehammer approach. You know, they want the display ads, they want the logos everywhere, they want to fill our videos full of objects. So we spend a lot of time sort of cutting things back.
Well, how do you deal with that, Ryan? Because that's a big thing in Live Nation. I mean, if we're going to do something, if Mike's going to do a strategic partnership with you, or we're going to do a deal with Live Nation with respect to our artist, an earn-out deal or something, Live Nation is very much want a lot of these placements and these promotional things.
Yeah, just taking a step back, you know, it's interesting just on the whole sponsorship front how things have changed. You know, literally 2 or 3 years ago, you know, we were fighting for sponsors. You know, you couldn't convince, you know, I'm not talking about, you know, the beer and the liquor, which is, you know, obviously, you know, involved in anything that involves young adults. But anything beyond that world, you know, you really had a very difficult time convincing them that the electronic space was somewhere they should be. And, you know, that had been the case since I started throwing parties in 1991. And, you know, fought the battle all through the 90s, you know, peaked, you know, probably, and I say bubble because the first time around it was a bubble, you know, in 1999, 2000, getting 30,000, 40,000 people out to shows, but yet not a single brand would touch it. You know, filling nightclubs on a weekly basis, you know, touring artists across the country, and nobody would go near it. And, you know, then sort of everything slowed down a little bit, and then came back again a couple of years ago, and once again we started fighting the same battle and going out and saying, hey, this is massive, this is worldwide, you know, you should be involved in this is touching your target market, and there's really no other way to reach these people other than, you know, through their experiences, through music obviously being, you know, the #1 way to reach people. So it's actually a new phenomenon, and you know, it's a long way around to answer your question. Now we get to a point where, you know, we've finally got people knocking on our door. You know, we've got brands that want to be associated with our festivals. They want to be associated with our events. And at the same time, you've got brands that want to be associated with artists, and they're signing deals that go across not only North America, but around the world. So we've got to now work in this system where, you know, does the money come through us and flow to the events, and do we finally take some reward from sort of all those years of trying to get here? Or, you know, are we now faced with a situation where we've kind of got to go with what the artists have? The good thing about being in the festival space is, you know, because it's 50 different people, you kind of get to step back from that and sort of control your sponsorship and control your partnerships. But when you get into the club level or the arena level or the stadium level like we do, a lot of the times, you know, once again, our hands are tied because now it's coming with the artists.
Can I just pick up on a couple of points? One is the sledgehammer approach, which I'll come to in a minute, and the other is brands and what do brands think of EDM. And you're absolutely right, Ryan. I mean, a few years back, it was too much of a risk, put it that way. And obviously, I think as the genre has become more popular, as it's crossed over into mainstream, brands have started taking notice of it. It is the way to reach the most difficult target audience, which is millennials. By 2017, that'll be a $200 billion market. And I think in the lifetime of all millennials, they'll have had $10 trillion worth of spending power. So it's a massive market, whichever way you look at it. So brands are interested, first thing. Second thing is that you will get those brands that are conservative and sit on the outside, and you will get those brands that want to push the boundaries. Now, interestingly, when we had the unfortunate deaths at Electric Zoo last Labor Day weekend, I actually called a number of brands on the Monday morning after that, or the Tuesday morning after that, which I did on behalf of SFX, who we invest in, as you probably know. And one brand in particular, as you say, one of the soft drinks manufacturers, not based in Atlanta, just to give you a clue, said they felt that a number of brands would probably, who've been looking at the space, would probably sit on the sidelines, but they definitely weren't going to go away. They were going to let other brands go into the water first, because there is such an interest in this area. I think in terms of the sledgehammer approach, I completely agree, that's absolutely wrong. You will get some folks doing that. I mean, we come at it a very different way, and it's one of the reasons that we invested in SFX. We also invested in Vice, is so that we get access into authentic creativity.
Okay, well, let me touch on that. I'm glad. We're going to take some questions from the audience because I want you guys to have access with these amazing people up here. But when we're talking about authentic branding, I mean, the fans of the electronic music genre are really, really smart. Y'all are smart kids, okay? So it's hard to sell a product to kids that are smarter than you. You gotta be really smart. I mean, when I was your age, I was into hookers and coke. You people are into organic farming and all kinds of this great stuff, You're still into hookers and coke. Okay, we gotta talk. But what I'm saying is that it's a really smart group of people. It's a youth movement, and these people are gonna change the world. So when we, as traditional business people, are trying to fit into this model and sell you some schlock, you're not gonna do that. You're way too smart for that. So does anybody have any questions for this panel? Over here. Right over here, okay. 1 second, what's your name? Ian McAdam, where are you from? Okay.
Kind of my question is like, every artist, quote unquote, sells out or gets with a brand that they enjoy, which isn't really selling out if the artist also enjoys that brand and uses that brand. But do you think that there is somewhat of a level that an artist should, quote unquote, sell out to try and get some help? Like if they're just trying to break essentially their costs and trying to make ends meet, do you think it's acceptable to?
Well, I think that would be a way that brands can add value. I mean, I think that's the critical thing. We talked about the sledgehammer approach, but really an intelligent brand is going to be trying to work with talent-led creative, doing integrated artist programs that fit the lifestyle of the artist and work with the artist, and adding value. So helping the creators with things that they need around their team. Perhaps it's different video directors they want to work with, or photographers, or different things that could help creators access other types of creatives to improve what they present to the world. So I think that's a way that brands can add value, and that's the kind of question that we're asking brands now if they want to get involved in our artists. We have to approach it from that level, not just in display ads or sheer volume of that.
Wait, one sec, I just want, hold on.
The answer to your question is no.
Yeah, right, but hold on, Mike, I want you to talk about this. The big no, but hold on. This is the challenge for artist representatives, like Dean and I. How are you going to build your brand when you're trying to hold on to the control of your assets, right? That's the challenge. Patrick, when people are signing to Ultra, it's a multiple rights deal. So you're signing for albums, you're signing for a piece of touring, you're signing for a piece of publishing, you're signing for some endorsement stuff, you know, percentage of that. The theory is we're using your money to take it to a new level. The challenge for that, how do we get through that and navigate that where the artist maintains control? Mike, you say no, they should not be doing these things. How do you, your philosophy with Patrick, the record company, how do the two of you coexist?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm saying no, they shouldn't be doing these things. What the enlightened brands should do, and not all brands are enlightened, by the way, and not all people from agencies are enlightened, but the enlightened brands need to step back a little bit when they're involved in an endorsement. So I always say to brands, you need to be the patrons. You're almost the patrons of the arts. Right, so you should be there to make sure or enable new artists to develop, to create new forms of content, etc., and then enable exposure for that. Doesn't mean you've got to control absolutely everything. In the world that we operate in today, brands can't really control anything because the consumer controls
I don't think we're a million miles apart. When I look at, let's say, Intel sponsoring the contributors to the Daft Punk album, and it's done with, you know, Vice and Intel, and it's just a logo at the beginning and a logo at the end, but nothing is, you know, otherwise it's just really the content.
It's very subtle.
And they're helping to present the content and provide the funding for that content. I see no problem with that.
I think, sorry, just to quickly jump in there, I think from the promoter perspective, the one thing that, you know, the people aren't necessarily focusing on is that this crowd, as you said, you know, smart and probably smarter than all of us, you know, they understand sponsorship, and I think that because it wasn't part of the business for such a long time, they understand that that money makes the party better. That money gets them better artists to come to their city. They're smart enough to know that Coca-Cola or Bacardi or all these brands are trying to sell products to them. That's a given. It's not like anybody's hiding or playing a game and putting the wool over their eyes. What's happened now is you've got the most possible receptive audience to this type of thing in any musical genre. I mean, you try and do what we do on a brand side in the rock world or the indie world or any of those kind of things, and you're going to get amazing pushback from the artists, from the fan base, from everybody. But within electronic music, people say, hey, this makes the party better, I'm all for it. I get the reason that they're there, and I don't care.
There's two different questions. One was whether the artist should sell out or whether the promoter. The promoter has no choice but to do those deals because, you know, artist fees go up and up and up. You know, at the end, the only people that ultimately suffer would be the ticket price, which will be the fans. So the question of, does the promoter do that? Yeah, the promoter's always done that, and now it's becoming easier because they all want to get into electronic music. Should the artist sell out? Well, if the artist does sell out as an opportunity to absolutely ruin his career, her or her career.
And what is sell out, in your opinion?
Doing a deal with something that you don't use, eat, or drink.
See, that's a good point. Something you don't use and or drink, right? So if you're the creative director of BlackBerry and then you're tweeting from your iPhone, it's not a good idea, okay? So authentic branding, I think, is what Dean's talking about. Question?
Yeah. Hi.
What's your name?
Alex. Here? Toronto? Here. I work at SOCAN, which is a performing rights organization here in Canada. Excuse me. My question to you is, it seems like there's a big, how do I say it? Artists in the EDM community or EMC community seem to grow at a really rapid pace. So they go from working out music in their basement or in their room to exploding at a much faster rate than, say, a band would. This is at least what I've noticed. For us, for example, when we just start noticing an artist starting to emerge on the scene, they might immediately already be getting poached by another performing rights organization in the world. Such a thing happened with, I think, Adventure Club in Montreal. Luckily, we have Mr. Mouse over there, so thanks, buddy. But how quickly do you need to approach these artists, sort of to get them into the scene? Sorry if I'm not making sense, but like how quickly do you have to go find them before they become huge, right?
Well, that's the foresight.
Well, I think as a management company, then you're always looking for new talent, and we have an A&R meeting once a week at our office where the managers get together and they share new music and stuff that's been sent, and it's a very, very early underground level. I remember when Chris Lake sent me Deadmau5 music, or at the time Deadmau5, as everybody called him, is, you know, that was shared and it was exciting, and that happens still every single day in our office as a management company. And Patrick, I'm sure will say the same thing.
I mean, the truth is, at this point, because of technology and the speed things move, it's real time. You hear something you like, you call. I mean, it's really, there is no, it's not, you know, you don't wait around. You know, used to be, things used to take a long time to develop. A touring base would develop, things would gradually progress, but now everything is very quick.
I think you summed it up earlier on when you said everybody, the millennials want everything instantly. If you cannot move that quickly in our space, then somebody else will be.
Snapchat.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting, because now, Patrick, you're at Sony, right? Major label, where traditionally Ultra moves quickly. You know, that you get it out, you get it out, you get it out. That's what this genre of music is used to. And how is it working now in that?
It's going very well, because Ultra's framework was
You're lighting a fire under their ass?
Yes, thank you. But a good example is, let's say, you know, we noticed a Robin Schultz remix of a song called Waves by Mr. Probs. We noticed that this mix was starting to buzz. We signed the record for the world. Today, it's, as we sit here, it's #1 in 20 countries, and it's top 10 in 37 countries. But it's something where you move quickly, and there's not a lot of time for waiting around in the traditional record company sense, you know.
What I'm hearing is having impeccable instincts. You know, certainly, I've worked with both of you before. You both, you know, you and Dean have impeccable instincts. You know, and I think that's really important, especially when you're looking for your artist teams of advisors. You know, your manager, you need to trust your manager. Okay, the one thing that I could say to the artists in this room is make sure that you understand not just the creative aspects of the business. Okay, understand what your copyrights do, what your trademarks do. These are very important, because when your manager calls you up and says, we're going to do this, if you can't follow his or her chain of thought because you're not educated in those areas, it's going to be very hard for you to keep up. You heard Patrick at the record company. They want to do things quickly.
Dina, I also think new artists, their creativity has to extend straight from music into new media and technology, and how creative that they could be to present their music out.
That's a great point. You know, it's so funny, because I've been so blessed to be in the music business my whole life, and you know, I've had this whole, during my life as a lawyer, I first got into this business in the rap music business, and that was difficult because all those artists is about guns and jewelry. You know, that's what took that genre down a little bit. Then I get into the rockers, right? I get all these big rock bands. It's about women and drugs. I'm like, oh shit. Now into the electronic music genre, it's great. The only thing you have to worry about is that they're hacking into Google, right? And they're up for 7 days programming, you know? It's just a very interesting part of the business where the first time ever technology melds with creativity, which we haven't seen that before, I don't think. Does anybody have any other questions?
Hello. Hi there, Sydney Falk from Next Big Sound. I was just really curious to kind of get your thoughts on, you know, what sort of methods or strategies do you guys employ to look at strategic partnerships with brands and creating that authentic experience for fans and really, you know, reaching the right demographic and partnering with them in that way?
There's a lot of data available about artists and who are their, you know, where they are geographically, their fans, and what age their fans are, and what their fans are consuming in other parts of their lives and their lifestyles. And matching that up with brands is something that, you know, every major campaign is doing, from InBev to any other big company. So
sorry. You are, through studying online data, social chatter, doing cookie-based analysis, you're able to get to a huge level of sophistication. So you could literally look at one artist's fans, for example, or the folks that have signed up on those social networks, and you can tell, I can get a ranking of which brands they're most interested in. I can also tell where they've gone to next. So I can tell which other artists they might be interested in. So you can actually track the brands.
Hi, my name is Izzy. I was just wondering, because you're characterizing the rise of ECM as a very like smart techie thing, as opposed to like diamonds and guns and women and coke, but like I see the rise of MDMA as like very much in tandem with ECM, and kind of the same way you have burnout from the bling era of rap and the cop kind of era of rock. It's like, do you anticipate blowback or lifestyle burnout from some elements of electronic dance music, I suppose?
I think Mike will be able to tell you, because he's Mr. Stato, and he'll be able to tell you that a life cycle of most clubbers or people that are into electronic music is somewhere between 3 and 4 years. Now, unless everybody stops giving birth tomorrow, then there's always going to be young people. Young people are always going to experiment, and whether we like it or not, drinking drugs are part of this culture. All that we can do is what SFX did so brilliantly well, in my opinion, Electric Zoo, is the day or when that started to go down, they immediately tried to educate the people that were there that there were some bad drugs, and they put notices between acts. They had phenomenal paramedic and backup systems. You know, all we can do as our business is educate and make sure that we support this, and don't ignore, it's there. We know it's there. What New York Post tried to do to Mike and Laura Bendra afterwards was disgusting.
It was a witch hunt.
It was a witch hunt. But these guys, what they did at that festival, and it was not reported because that wasn't the sensationalised news. You know, Michael Rapino will tell you that more people die every year at his country festivals and his rock festivals than ever do. But that doesn't make the news because they're not young.
Well, going back to what I said before about cautious brands and those more adventurous brands, for those more adventurous brands, and again, this was my Tuesday morning conversation with a major brand, there is a massive opportunity there, which, if some brands took it, which is to help promote safety at festivals in conjunction with the festival promoters. They're doing something that's really authentic, they're putting something back, and I don't think they're going to get much kickback from that at all.
Yeah, I think Dean mentioned, first of all, the life cycle of your average person going out is definitely under 5 years. So we're dealing with people that come, dabble for the most part, and are gone and moved on in their lives. But from a safety aspect, and from a person who does large scale festivals, absolutely, kids are going to experiment. It's going to be there whether they're at rock or dance or anything. But I think that what the spotlight, because of it being a brand new drug, when it did originally obviously come through in the 80s and the 90s, and being so closely associated with the music did, was make it about the drug. So as promoters, obviously we want to continue to be promoters, and we want to be able to do this, for a long time into the future. So obviously we have to create a safe environment. And I think what's happened, because our scene has been so closely associated with drugs, it's forced us to actually create probably the safest environment in the entire world in which to do drugs. And in a sense, I'm not saying I'm not saying that we are creating a drug-filled environment, but I mean, if you accept the premise that kids are going to experiment with whether it be alcohol or drugs or anything like that, there is no safer place to do it than one of our events, because every possible measure to help educate and give you information about what you're doing is available.
I think the press has been very unfair to electronic music about this issue, and I was on site.
There are a bunch of old people that are writing these blogs. Okay, they don't even understand what's going on out there. Hello.
I was on site.
We got Uber now. I know how to use Uber. I'm 50, but I know how to use it.
I was on site at Electric Zoo, and everything was, big attention to safety. I saw them turning away people who looked like they were out of it at the door. I mean, they were doing everything they could. They had medics on site. It was very well run. And you think about Bonnaroo or something like that, where unfortunately somebody passes almost every year, but there's no media coverage of that. So it's just, it's kind of hypocritical.
Don't take the brown acid.
Don't take the brown acid. Is that how we're going to end? We have one more time for, don't take the brown acid. Do we have one time for one more question? Yes, young lady, where are you from?
Yeah, Alex from McKean-Knox. Yeah, so I just had a question about brand endorsements. Do you think there's more room now for artists to emerging artists to partner with brands? Do you think it's more open nowadays?
Well, the opportunity's there like never before. Exactly what Ryan was saying of us trying to get sponsors interested and them not wanting anything to do with this music for years and years. And now they're all really queuing up. I think the question for the talent is, and for the artist community, you have to control the presentation. You know, it has to be artist, you know, integrated artist programs, talent-led creative, and the brands have to seek to add value. So anything else is just going to be the sledgehammer approach, and that's why the intelligent brands will be supporting the artists and supporting the creative process, trying to transform the culture by enabling creators to make their music and their presentation even better.
And one of I know we're almost out of time. One of the topics that I probably discuss the most with brands, because they want to get into this in an authentic way, is artist discovery. Going back to the notion that I had before of the best brands are patrons of the arts, those brands are looking to get into artist discovery somehow as part of the partnership that they have, either with labels, with management companies, or with festivals.
Final thoughts? Anybody else on the panel? Besides, don't take the brown acid.
Take the blue pill.
I think it's also the responsibility of the senior artists within our world, and deadmau5 does that phenomenally well with Mousetrap, is to keep helping and bring through new young talent through their labels and their shows and their supports. I think that's really important for our industry.
Shelley?
I echo that, and also giving young artists the opportunity to be exposed. I always remember that Tina Turner languished for years, and then the Rolling Stones brought her on tour and she exploded. So if you have artists and today, obviously, they don't make most of their money from recording, to keep them active, keep them working, keep them exposed, and if they have the goods, they will eventually come through.
Ryan?
Yeah, and to go back to your question, and how do emerging artists, get involved with brands and all this, I go back to what Patrick just said. Because the fact that, brands are now lining up at our door, and everybody wants to be part of this thing, the creative minds on the agency side and on the experiential side are constantly trying to figure out new ways to integrate their brands with the culture. And that gives so many more opportunities to emerging artists than you ever had before. So, the fact is, be good at what you do and be an artist that people take notice of, but be aware that the opportunities now are greater than they've ever been.
Okay, well, thank you guys. Stay tuned for deadmau5. The bottom line is be safe, help others, be of service. Good karma will come back to you twofold. Get educated, make music, love each other. Thank you.